If you ever see someone waving at you from inside a house that should be empty, keep driving. My name is Jason Miller, and this happened when I was 23 years old. During the summer, I worked for a property inspection company outside Portland, Oregon. My job was simple. Banks hired our company to inspect abandoned homes, take photos, and confirm whether anyone was living there. Most of the time, it meant driving to old neighborhoods, checking yards, snapping a few pictures, and leaving. Boring work. Until Pine Hollow Lane. It was a Thursday afternoon when my manager sent me one last address before I could go home. 1847 Pine Hollow Lane. He told me the owners had moved out 6 months earlier after foreclosure. No utilities, no occupants. Easy job. I grabbed my camera bag and drove out there. The neighborhood felt strange the moment I arrived. Every house looked normal. Fresh lawns, cars in driveways, kids' bikes on porches, except number 1847. That house looked dead. Tall grass, crooked mailbox, boarded side window, no car, no lights. Even the trees around it looked darker. As I parked across the street, an older woman watering flowers 2 houses down stared at me. Then she shouted, "Don't go in there after sunset." I laughed awkwardly. "It's just an inspection." She didn't smile. "Then inspect fast." I crossed the street and walked toward the house. The yard was silent. No birds, no insects, nothing. I took photos of the exterior. Front door, broken shutters, overgrown gate. Then I stepped onto the porch. The front window beside the door was covered by faded curtains. As I raised my camera, the curtain moved. A hand slowly pulled it aside from inside. Then someone waved at me. Just a pale hand moving side to side. I jumped backward. "Hello?" I shouted. No answer. The curtain dropped closed. My heart was pounding. Maybe a squatter. Maybe someone living there. I called my office. No answer. I should have left. Instead, I unlocked the front door with the contractor key and stepped inside. The smell hit first. Dust, mold, and something rotten. Sunlight barely reached through the covered windows. The living room was empty except for an old recliner facing a blank wall. I called out, "Inspection company, anyone here?" No answer. Then from upstairs, 3 footsteps. Slow, heavy. I backed toward the front door, but I still needed proof photos. So I snapped pictures of the living room and kitchen. Every kitchen cabinet door was open, all empty, except one. Inside was a plate with fresh apple slices, cold to the touch. Someone was here. I ran for the front door. It wouldn't open. The handle turned. The deadbolt moved, but the door stayed stuck. Then I heard footsteps upstairs again, this time faster, coming toward the stairs. I looked up. At the top of the staircase stood a little girl, maybe 8 years old. Long dark hair, white dress, bare feet. She slowly waved at me. I said, "Hey, are you okay?" She pointed behind me. I turned. The front door was now open. When I looked back, she was gone. I sprinted outside. Stopped running until I reached my truck. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the keys. The older woman across the street was now standing at the curb, staring directly at me. I rolled the window down. "There's a little girl in there," I shouted. She didn't look surprised. "There are no children in that house," she said quietly. "I just saw one." Her face tightened. "Then you shouldn't have let her see you." I drove away without saying another word. That night at exactly 11:14 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. No one spoke. At first, all I heard was static, then soft breathing. Then a little girl's voice whispered, "You forgot your camera." I sat upright on the couch. I checked my truck immediately. My camera bag was gone. I must have left it inside the house. The next morning, my manager called furious. That camera belonged to the company. He told me to go back and get it. I refused. He said if I didn't return with the equipment, I was fired. So around noon, I drove back to Pine Hollow Lane. The neighborhood looked normal again. Bright sunlight, kids riding bikes, sprinklers running. But something was wrong. The older woman's house was empty. No car, no flowers, no furniture visible through the windows, like no one had lived there for years. I walked to number 1847. My camera bag was sitting neatly in the center of the porch, zipped closed. I grabbed it and backed away immediately. Inside were all my things, the camera, the batteries, everything. But there was one extra item, a glossy printed photograph. It showed me standing on the porch the day before, taken from inside the house. And in the background, across the street, the older woman stood at the curb smiling. I drove straight to the county records office. I asked about 1847 Pine Hollow Lane. The clerk typed the address into his system, then frowned. That property burned down in 2009. I laughed nervously. No, I was there yesterday. He turned the monitor toward me. There was an aerial photo attached to the file. An empty lot, blackened concrete foundation, no house, no porch, no mailbox, nothing. I thought it had to be some mistake. I drove back one more time. The street was there, the neighborhood was there, but where 1847 should have been, there was only an empty lot. Burned remains, charred foundation, tall dead grass, no house at all. I slammed on the brakes and got out. My heart was pounding. I knew I had walked through that front door. I knew I had stood in that kitchen. Then I noticed something in the ash-covered dirt. Fresh boot prints. My boot prints. Leading from the curb to the center of the empty lot. And stopping. I never returned. I quit the company 2 weeks later. 3 years passed. I moved into an apartment in another city. I never told anyone the full story. Then last month, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was one photograph. It showed my apartment building from across the street. I was visible through my second-floor window, standing in my kitchen. And in the dark room behind me, a little girl in a white dress, slowly waving. I dropped the photograph and nearly threw up. Someone had taken that picture recently, which meant someone had been watching me. I locked every door in my apartment that night. I closed every curtain. I checked every closet, every cabinet, even under the bed. Nothing. Still, I barely slept. At 2:13 a.m., I woke up to a soft tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. Coming from my living room window. I grabbed a kitchen knife and slowly walked down the hallway. The apartment was dark except for streetlight shining through the curtains. The tapping came again. Tap, tap, tap. I pulled the curtain open. No one was there, just the empty parking lot below. Then I saw it. On the outside of the glass, a small handprint. At second floor height, I stumbled backward. My phone rang immediately. Unknown number. I answered. No one spoke. Then I heard the same little girl's voice. "Why did you leave me there?" The line went dead. I called the police. 2 officers arrived and searched the apartment building. Roof, hallways, fire escape, nothing. They told me someone was probably harassing me. They couldn't explain the handprint. The next day, I installed cameras inside my apartment. Front door, living room, bedroom, kitchen. I wanted proof. That night, I stayed awake watching the camera feed on my laptop. Midnight, nothing. 1 a.m., nothing. 2 a.m., nothing. At 2:12 a.m., every camera went black for 3 seconds. When the feed returned, my bedroom door was open. I was certain I had closed it. I slowly walked down the hallway. My bedroom was dark. The door creaked wider as I approached. Inside, the closet door was also open. I turned on the light. Nothing inside. Then I heard breathing behind me. I spun around. No one there. My laptop on the bed suddenly made a notification sound. One new image saved from the living room camera. I opened it. It showed me standing in my bedroom doorway, taken from behind, and in the hallway behind me, the little girl in the white dress, smiling. I ran out of the apartment that same night. I didn't even pack clothes. I stayed in a motel across town. The next morning, police reviewed the camera footage. They said there was no little girl in any frame. No one entered my apartment. No doors opened. No sound except me moving around. Then the officer paused the video at 2:12 a.m. for just one frame during the blackout. The living room camera captured something standing inches from the lens. A child-sized figure, long dark hair, white dress, one hand raised, waving. I moved out permanently. The apartment was rented again 2 months later. I tried forgetting everything, until last week. I was driving home from work when I passed an old neighborhood street. On the corner was a burned, empty lot, charred foundation, tall, dead grass. A weathered sign read, Pine Hollow Lane, and standing in the center of the lot was a little girl in white, slowly waving at me. This time, I waved back. The moment I waved back, I knew I had made a mistake. The little girl's smile widened unnaturally. Then every streetlight around the empty lot shut off at once. Darkness swallowed the road. I slammed on the gas and sped away so fast my tires screeched. In the rearview mirror, I could still see her standing in the center of the lot, one hand raised, waving. I didn't stop until I reached home. That night, I pushed a chair against my apartment door, locked every window, and kept every light on. I told myself it was over. I was wrong. At 2:13 a.m., all the lights in my apartment went out. Every bulb, every lamp, even the hallway emergency light outside my door. The entire building went black. Then came the knocking. 3 slow knocks from inside my closet. Knock, knock, knock. I froze in bed. The closet door began to shake gently, then harder. Then it slowly creaked open by itself. Inside was only darkness. From that darkness, a child's voice whispered, "You invited me." I ran for the front door. The chair was gone. The deadbolt was unlocked. I yanked the door open and sprinted into the hallway. Other apartment doors were open too. People were standing outside, confused. The power was out for the whole building. An older man from down the hall asked me why I was screaming. Then he looked past me into my apartment. His face went pale. He quietly said, "There's a little girl standing in your kitchen." Everyone turned. No one moved. I slowly looked back. At the far end of my apartment, illuminated by moonlight from the window, stood the girl in the white dress, still, silent, one hand raised, waving. Then every apartment light came back on. She was gone. Police came again. They searched the unit. Nothing. No footprints, no forced entry, no sign of anyone. But one officer asked me something strange. "Why is there ash all over your kitchen floor?" I looked down. Gray-black ash was scattered across the tiles. In the center of it were small barefoot footprints, leading from the kitchen to my bedroom and stopping beside the bed. I moved out that morning. I left furniture, clothes, dishes, everything. I rented a motel 2 towns away and never told anyone where I went. For months, nothing happened. No calls, no photos, no tapping. I finally thought it was done. Then on the first anniversary of the day I visited Pine Hollow Lane, I received a package at work. No return address. Inside was a small framed photograph. It showed a family standing in front of a house. A mother, 2 daughters, one older, one younger, all smiling. On the back, written in faded ink, "The Holloway family, summer 2008. I stared at the younger daughter. White dress, long dark hair, same face, same smile. Then I noticed something else. Standing in the upstairs window behind them was me, wearing the same clothes I had worn the day I first visited the lot. I quit my job that same week and moved out of state. I'm telling this story now because last night, after 3 years of silence, someone knocked on my front door. 3 slow knocks. When I checked the peephole, there was no one there. But taped to the door was a child's drawing, a house, a girl in white, and me standing beside her, waving back. I should have burned the drawing. That's what I think now. Instead, I folded it, shoved it into a kitchen drawer, and tried to pretend none of it was real. By then, I had moved 3 states away. New apartment, new job, new phone number. No one knew where I lived except my manager and one coworker. I stopped telling people about Pine Hollow Lane because every time I did, they looked at me the same way. Half pity, half disbelief. So I stayed quiet. For 6 months, nothing happened. No calls, no tapping, no photographs, no little girl. I almost convinced myself stress had broken me. Then October came. The same week I first visited Pine Hollow Lane. It started small. I came home from work one evening and found my front door unlocked. Nothing stolen, nothing moved. I blamed myself. The next night, I woke up and found my bedroom closet standing open. I always kept it shut. Again, I blamed myself. The third night, I found ash on the bathroom sink. Gray-black ash, like burned paper. That's when I knew. I opened the kitchen drawer and pulled out the child's drawing. The paper was warm. Not hot, warm. My stomach dropped. I unfolded it. The picture had changed. The first time, it showed a girl in white and me standing beside her. Now there was another figure in the upstairs window. Tall, thin, featureless, watching. I threw the drawing down the apartment trash chute. At 2:13 a.m., I woke to 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. From inside the wall beside my bed. I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, the drawing was back on my kitchen counter, perfectly folded. No dirt, no damage, just waiting. I called in sick to work. Then I did the one thing I promised myself I'd never do. I drove back to Oregon, back to Pine Hollow Lane. The road looked smaller than I remembered. Daylight made everything feel normal. Kids rode bikes, dogs barked, sprinklers clicked across green lawns. But when I turned onto Pine Hollow Lane, the street went silent. No wind, no birds, no distant traffic, nothing. The burned lot was still there, charred concrete foundation in the grass. And standing in the center of it, the little girl. White dress, long dark hair, bare feet blackened with ash. She raised one hand and waved. I stayed inside my car. I refused to wave back. After a few seconds, she lowered her hand and pointed toward the center of the foundation. Then she vanished. No smoke, no blur, gone. I sat frozen behind the wheel for almost a minute. Then I got out. The air over the lot felt colder than the rest of the street. I stepped onto the cracked foundation. The middle section had partially collapsed. Beneath it was a narrow cellar opening. I was sure it hadn't been there before. A rusted metal ladder led down into darkness. Every sane thought in my head told me to leave. I climbed down anyway. The cellar was small and cramped. Concrete walls, dirt floor, heavy smell of smoke and mildew. My flashlight beam moved across burned shelves, melted jars, and warped wooden beams. Then it landed on the far wall. Photographs, dozens of them, pinned in rows. Some black and white, some old color prints, some modern photos. Every picture showed someone standing in front of the Pine Hollow house. Delivery drivers, teenagers, police officers, neighbors, workers, different people from different decades, all photographed from inside the house. Every face looked confused, like they had no idea they were being watched. Then I found the newer row. My chest tightened. There was me on the porch, me walking to my truck, me asleep in a motel bed, me standing in my apartment kitchen, me entering my office building. At the bottom was one empty nail, waiting for another picture. Something scraped behind me. I spun around. Nothing there. Then I heard footsteps above, walking slowly across the burned foundation. Small footsteps, like a child pacing overhead. I climbed the ladder so fast I nearly slipped. When I reached daylight, no one was there. But lying exactly where I had stood was an old brass key. A tag was tied to it. 1847. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I picked it up and put it in my pocket. That night, I stayed at a roadside motel outside town. I pushed a dresser against the door and checked every corner of the room twice. At 2:13 a.m., the motel phone rang. I had unplugged it earlier. It still rang. I stared at it for several seconds before answering. No one spoke. I only heard soft breathing. Then the little girl whispered, "You found the key." The line went dead. I left before sunrise. Back in my apartment, things became worse. Cabinets were open when I got home. The bathroom faucet turned on by itself at night. My smoke detector chirped constantly, even after I replaced the batteries. Neighbors began asking if I had a child living with me. I said no. They told me they kept hearing footsteps running across my ceiling. I lived on the top floor. Then one evening, my coworker Ben stopped by unexpectedly. He had helped me move before and knew part of the story. When he saw all the extra locks on my door, he laughed. "Man, you seriously need therapy." Maybe I did. I showed him the brass key. He turned it over in his hand. Tiny letters were engraved on the back. Basement. Ben grinned. "Dude, let's go check the lot this weekend." I told him absolutely not. That night he texted me, "Too late, already here." Attached was a photo of him standing on the burned foundation, holding the key. I never gave it to him. I called immediately, no answer. Then another text came. "There's a door under the concrete." Then another, "I hear someone upstairs." Then another, "Jason, call me now." I called over and over, straight to voicemail. The next morning, police searched the lot. No sign of Ben. No phone, no blood, nothing. His car was found parked 2 streets away. A missing person case was opened. Weeks passed. Ben never came back. Then I received a padded envelope at work. No return address. Inside was the brass key and one Polaroid photo. Ben stood in a dark basement. His eyes were wide with fear. He was staring past the camera at something behind the photographer. Written on the back, he waved back too. I quit my job again. I moved again. This time to a small town in Idaho. I rented a cabin far from neighbors. For 2 months, nothing happened. No calls, no footsteps, no drawings. Then winter arrived. One night, I woke to tapping on the front window. Tap, tap, tap. I looked outside. Small, barefoot tracks in the snow came from the tree line. They stopped directly beneath the window. I pulled back the curtain. Nothing there. But on the frosted glass, written from outside, was one word: home. I packed immediately and left before dawn. I drove for hours and stopped at a gas station in Nevada. Inside, the cashier glanced at me strangely. "You got family traveling with you?" "No," he pointed outside. "In the back seat." I ran to my truck. No one was inside, but on the fogged rear window was a tiny handprint, made from the inside. That was a year ago. Since then, I've never stayed anywhere long. Motels, cheap apartments, friends' couches, anywhere temporary. Last night, I rented a room in Kansas. Floral bedspread, buzzing neon sign outside. I checked under the bed, closet, bathroom, nothing. At 2:13 a.m., I woke up to complete silence. No highway noise, no wind, no sound at all. At the foot of the bed stood the little girl, white dress, burned black at the hem, hair covering her face, still as stone, one hand raised, waiting. I whispered, "What do you want?" She slowly lifted her hair. Half of her face was burned, one eye cloudy white, the other filled with tears. When she spoke, the voice was not a child's. It sounded like many voices speaking together. "Let us out." Then she vanished. The motel room door burst open. Cold air rushed inside. At the far end of the dark hallway stood a tall woman in a nightgown. Featureless face, the same woman from the house. She began walking toward me, slowly, one step at a time. I grabbed my keys and ran through the side exit. I'm writing this now from a bus station. I left my truck. My phone battery is almost dead. Across from me, a little girl sits alone on a bench. White dress, bare feet. She keeps smiling, and every few seconds, she waves.